As I mentioned, Manley and I just got back from Uganda on Tuesday morning at 9:45. We arrived. We left Uganda 7:35 p.m. Monday evening. Their time arrived in Toronto International Airport at 9:45 Tuesday morning, our time. And we it was an amazing trip. This was my second time. This was Manley's first time. And so I asked Manley to give a report to us about the trip and how it impacted him. And some of you are just starting to get to know Manley. I have a lot more stories now. So some of them I will keep for a while. But one of the things that I have grown to appreciate about Manley is his heart for God and his heart for people. And it was amazing for me to experience this trip with him, and I want you to experience this trip through him.
Thanks, Steve. I love how he says asked. I feel like it was more told. Like we got, I don't know, I think from one door to the other, it's about 30 hours of travel. And we get there after traveling all this long time, and then we just get to where we're about to stay. And he says, "Oh, by the way, July 7th, you're doing an update of the church." And I'm like, "Oh, funny how, wait till we get here for you to tell me this." If I would have known ahead of time, maybe I just would have let him go by himself. But yeah, so I'm glad to be back. I'm just thankful for all of you people that prayed for us and also just supported us through the bridge financially. I just want to say thank you at the start of that. There's a lot of things that I could share with you. I have a struggle of too much information, too many stories, what God is doing there. But I want to give you a good capture of what I Live Again Uganda is doing there. Because I know myself with Benson and Trisha coming, they come and give updates, and I'm so thankful for them coming so frequently and hearing about the organization, but just going there and experiencing it myself, I really got a good grasp of what they're doing and how impactful it is in their community around them. So I'm kind of focusing on ELA is what they call it. I Live Again Uganda is ELA. So if I say that, that is what it is. The one thing going there, Steve had said, they really have a hard time saying his name because the S, they can't pronounce it. And I was like, this is going to be good. Like, I got to watch this every time he says his name, and they're going to struggle to say Steve. And then I get there, and do you think they can say Manley? And it's like, visitors are a big thing. So, like, we get to a village, and there's like 400 people around. And what do they have to do? They have to put you up in front of them, and you have to introduce yourself and where you're from. And I say, Manley. And you like look at 400 people, and they're all like, what? What did you just say? So it was kind of disappointing that Steve had the fun part, and I didn't. So I'm just going to start with, here's a map of Uganda, just so you guys kind of get a picture of where we were. So at the bottom, the very tip there is Entebbe. That is where we landed. That's where the airport is, and that's where the equator line is, actually. And the Kampala is the capital of Uganda. So we stayed there one night before traveling north to Gulu, where ELA is mostly based out of Gulu. It's a 5-hour drive. Driving in Uganda is something that's interesting. Paved roads are not really much of a thing. The highway is paved, but like the 62 out here, that would be the highway they have. Like, we're not talking 401, multiple lanes and orderly traffic. That's it, and that is to go to the rest of the country from the capital. And like, lanes aren't a thing also. Learn this very quickly. Like, you drive on one side of the road and there's other people coming the other way, and if you want to pass, you kind of just go when you want and hope it works out. And there's motorbikes going up beside you, and it is disastrous. I think Steve, at one point, he was trying to brake in the front seat. Like, they told me, they're like, yeah, I was just watching his leg, and like when we were driving the whole time, I don't know what he was trying to do, trying to stop. It didn't work for him. So yeah, we started out in Kampala, and that's where there's a lot of people that have moved from the north there from the war. So there was a war in Uganda. It started in the late 70s and ended in about 2009, but it was in the northern part of Uganda. So if you see that national park, there's the Nile River that flows through there, and is what splits the north and the south of Uganda. And in the north was where the war was, and the government held it to the north because of the Nile being able to split that. But a lot of people, they fled to Kampala during the time of the war. So just so you guys kind of get an idea of the geography of Uganda, and it'll just help you as I talk some more. So this is, I would say, the first place that we visited that ELA is doing their work. It's called the Acholi Quarter. Acholi is a tribe in Uganda, in the northern part of Uganda. And that's so Benson and Trisha, when Benson comes to visit, that is his tribe. And most of the people in Ela, that is their tribe. And Acholi is a dialect. It's what they speak. There's multiple different tribes in Uganda, and they speak different languages. So when you get into the capital of Kampala, they can all speak one of these different dialects. But English is something that unifies people, but not everybody speaks English, or it's very broken. So Acholi Quarter, this is where the people that have fled from the north during the war to Kampala are living. So there's about 22,000 people living in this place. They're living on top of each other. They're all squished in, and they all fled there because of the war. And they are displaced from their families in the north, and they don't have income in any way. A lot of them don't have access to school. There's no public washrooms, or they've been installed in places, but that's not an option. Running water, not a thing. They are living in severe poverty here, and no way of making any income. They'd be living on less than $1 a day. So this is where ELA is doing some of their work. They're doing trauma counseling with these individuals. They travel from Gulu here to do that. But I'll talk about the trauma counseling a bit more later on. So, it skipped 2. That's the one I want. So you see this kind of pit here in the Acholi Quarter. This is a mine, the quarry mine that they have there. That this was a way that people were able to make income. This part of the quarry has been shut down. So people would go and mine and pull stuff out of here, and then it would be sold so they could make a little bit of money just to afford one meal a day. They didn't have opportunity to make any more money than that. And a number of people have also died because of this. It's not organized. It's not like our country. There's rules and regulations and things that you have to follow. People are just here trying to scratch a living. And by digging here, a lot of people had died, and a lot of people had lost family members because of it. But it was their only option to make money. A lot of other people also, they would make beads. They would get string and make beads and sell that. That was an opportunity for them, but that's not so much anymore an option for them. So it keeps getting worse and worse for them in the situation that they're in. Here, yes, birthday boy. That's Steve. This is the office in the Acholi Quarter that ELA works out of. So they will bring people here to do their trauma counseling and are just able to serve people out of here. And we just got an opportunity to visit it and do a little tour before traveling home. Oh, that was supposed to be a video. Oh, there, look, it worked. This is the Nile River. So after being in the Acholi Quarter, we traveled north. When we got here, they said, don't take any pictures or videos. And I took a video. And then it wasn't that big of a deal. But then when we got back and we're going across, they're like, no, don't take any pictures or videos. So I'm like, oh, I won't tell you about the one I took on the way there. But yes, this is the Nile. So when I talk about the war from the north and the south, this is what split it, and the government held it back here. So the rebels couldn't move to the south. Yeah, Lloyd, you want to try swimming across there? Yeah, it's good. Yeah, they have hydroelectric dams there, actually. That's one of the ways that the country produces power. But power in Uganda is not cheap. People can't afford it. It's much more expensive than what we pay here, and their income is a lot less. So there's a lot of people like cook with charcoal. Refrigeration's not a thing. There's a lot of meat that I have my food handler certificate. I work in at camp in the kitchen, so I kind of know what food has to be handled at. And there was times that I saw stuff, I'm like, I'm not touching that. I seen where that's been. Because there's still military there at that point, so you drive by the military men. But they told me after the fact, they said they don't want pictures or videos because they have actually guns and artillery still in, like, still protecting the Nile there. So the police don't want you to take videos, so you know where, like, send it out, and then other people who are coming in to attack know where the weapons are. So I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so this is Ila's organization in Gulu. This is kind of the hub where everything happens. This is where Steve spent a lot of his time teaching. We sat outside under a tent because it was kind of cool. Us being there was able to kind of unite them too, because they have about 30 people that work at Ela, and this kind of brought them all together. I asked them, how often are you guys together? And they said, this doesn't happen very often. So I was just glad that by us being there, we could unite them and have everyone together. And Steve was able to do some teaching with them. And we got to, it was really, Steve didn't bring a sweater. Ange told him to bring a sweater, but he didn't. And it was hot, but in the mornings it would be cool. So we'd be sitting out under the tent in the shade, and he'd be like, "Oh, I wish I listened to Ange right now." Well, I got to get back for the shirt comment. Like, I did look at the shirt this morning. I was like, I should wear that, but one, I'd have to match Steve, and two, it's not really broken in yet. It's a bit scratchy, and I don't know if I want to be up in front of people. One, I don't want to be up in front of people, but two, I don't want to be wearing the scratchy shirt the whole time either. I'll break it in and wear it someday. This is just inside their office. Most of their stuff is inside. It's not under the tent, but we were a lot of people, so we spent time outside. Trisha is a lovely person who makes coffee for us. Coffee beans are one of the biggest exports, if not the biggest export for Uganda, but they don't drink it because, colonialism, and they drink tea. So Benson drinks tea but won't drink coffee, but I think we convinced him to try some here. I don't know if he liked it, but he had it. Okay, now I'm going to talk a little bit about the war and kind of help you guys understand the picture of what it was like. I think when we say war, we get a picture. We think of First World War and Second World War. We get a good history in our school system and understand kind of what that looks like. The war that was in Uganda is not like those wars. It was, I think one of the words I'll use is like barbaric and inhumane by what things happened there. So there was a group of the country is not it's a dictatorship, or the president somehow always gets voted in, but he is, so there's some rebels that wanted to uprise against the government. And this is in the late 70s, and we started to have a few people like this, and they would convince people in the tribes that, hey, we want to uprise against the government, they're doing terrible things. And everyone's like, sure, we're going to jump on board with that. That's a great idea. And then they would leave and they go into the wilderness, and they're training their people. But then they got, I'd say, religious in a way, or they would start brainwashing people, in that they would have rules and regulations that they want people to follow. That they would go back to the towns where they brought their own people from, and they would try and impress these rules on them. But the people are like, no, we're not doing this. These are not good rules. Like, where'd you get these ideas from? And they started killing their own people. And that's what this war was, that these rebels started attacking their own people, and the government didn't come in and stop them. They held the Nile, and the government with the military tried to help the people but couldn't defeat the rebels. So this war was stuck between the South Sudan border and the Nile River. And these rebels would they built a good force and brainwash people, and they would come into the cities and they would take children that were young, so they could like young boys, so they could rise them up to be warriors for them, but they could brainwash them as well. That at an age that they didn't know anything else, and they were able to train them to be their soldiers, and then return and attack and kill their own people. Um, and this is just one spot in Gulu that we were walking through. The first day we were in Gulu, we had the opportunity to walk around, and the ELA staff just shared some of their stories that they had from the war. That's the one thing you have to recognize. A lot of the people that are there in ELA have been through the war, or they were children through the war, and they know what it's like, and they are able to use their experiences to do trauma counseling with other people. But this is just one spot that I was walking with a guy named Fred that works with ELA, and at first Fred is a very tall man. Like, I'm tall, but Fred's tall, and I'm just like, don't hurt me. But then just grew to love his personality and how joyful he was and how gentle he was. There's a picture that I wanted to get, but I couldn't get a good one, that we were at one spot and there was a little girl that just came up and he was just holding her hand and he had the biggest smile on his face. And just the joy that he had was amazing. But he was sharing that I think at one point his father had passed away, and he was living with his mother. But that, again, wasn't a good relationship. And this was during the war. So he had left home, and they would sleep under they call them like verandas or the porches of these buildings in the town of Gulu. The kids would come, and this is where they would stay and try and hide from the rebels. And I've put this picture on the bottom to show that bag on the back of that motorbike, that motorbike is something that they transport everything with. You'll see some crazy things being transported on those. I don't know, like live animals. I was just like driving along. It's like, oh, there's 2 pigs on there with him. Huh. But so that bag they pointed out like this. Oh, those are a big thing. Like, that's all they had to sleep with. Like, they would sleep on the ground under these porches during the war, and all they had was that bag. They could put themselves inside of it and try and keep themselves warm. Maybe they're like, if we're lucky, you had a piece of cardboard that you could put over yourself. But in running from the rebels and trying to get protection in the town, these kids, it's all they had. And they would, at night, sometimes the rebels would come and take kids, and you'd look back or down the street, you'd wake up and you'd see these rebels carrying your friends away, and wanting to use them to build their army, to keep attacking people. This is another spot that they took us to. This building, so as the war went on, it's not like today, information isn't spread so easily. We have a cell phone. We learn what's going on across the world in seconds. But back then, people didn't know what was going on. The Western world didn't know what was going on. But as time went on through the war, people learned what was happening. And different missionaries came. That was the biggest thing that started the change in the war, was missionaries came and saw what was going on and tried to help people. So they started to build some buildings like this in Gulu. This is where kids slept. So because the rebels were trying to get children so they could indoctrinate, can't say that word, that they could teach these kids how to fight. So what families would do would send their kids to the town and try and get them protected at night, and then they would travel back and forth every day. So the rebels couldn't come at night and take their kids. So Fred and a number of these guys would stay inside these buildings, and it was not good conditions. Like sleeping space was like a little spot on the ground. Like, you could lay sideways and that was it, and you were surrounded by people. And if the next day you came back and the guy that you slept beside isn't there, he's most likely dead, and you'll never see him again. Is what they said, that the kids that you're around, you'd know them, but if they were gone, you wouldn't see them again. And those were the conditions that they were sleeping in. That's Fred over there. So yeah, like the conditions of this war was brutal. And there's things that I don't even want to repeat. Like buses being bombed and children dying. Like cannibalism, like terrible stuff going on because of this war. And that's why I say, like, we think of war that we know, that we grew up in school learning about. Like, this is way different. And people were severely traumatized because of it. Um, and this is what leads into what ELA's, I would say, primary thing that they're doing is they're doing trauma counseling with these war victims. They're going into the Chole Quarter, like I said. They're going into villages and working with people. And we got the opportunity to see that, which is I was really thankful for, and also the beginning and the ends of what that kind of looked like. So this is the first time we went to visit a village. This is Joel. He works for ELA, and he's starting their trauma counseling here. We also grew to really appreciate him too, that he's got a really quiet personality, and has a big heart and so soft spoken, and he's great to talk to. And then he got in front of this group, and it was like, who are you? Like, he was so animated, and he was like so engaging with them. It was amazing to see. And that's one thing that I really appreciated about our trip, was also just getting to know the ELA staff and what they're doing, but who they are and their individual stories, and how they're using their stories to build relationships with people, but also giving them hope as well. That God has done a work in them, and that they're able to share that with other people, and bring life transformation for other people as well. So this is the trauma counseling. So this is one village that we were in, and each village is different in how many people will come out. But they start off with a program called Empower, which is a 3-week program of trauma counseling, and then they do a break, and then they come back and do another 3 weeks of discipleship training with them in the villages, and that's kind of where their training ends with them. But we got to see one village at the end of the Empower training. I think Steve shared, and it was just amazing to see the joy that they had, like after 3 weeks of them sharing their stories. As a group, they do counseling, but then they do one-on-one counseling as they get further in, and just the joy that people had, that they were just breaking free from stuff that held them down for so long, and that God was able to come in and transform their lives. It was just amazing to see. This next photo, this is the South Sudan border. I think there's a war in South Sudan going on right now, and they have refugees that come into Uganda. They're accepting most of the refugees. This camp we were in, there is 80,000 refugees right now, and they're getting 400 every month added on to that number, people fleeing from South Sudan. And the government, this is a government building. We went and met with the official there, and just kind of heard the stuff that they're up against, and just heard what the work they're doing in these communities is. And yeah, we were just able to meet with them. But I think the one reason I showed this photo is when Steve first went 5 years ago, or however long it was. The one thing he was just shocked by was when he went. The war was it was earlier on, but it was just tents. Like, there was no buildings, and he was just shocked by the fact that, like, the government has moved in, there's buildings going up, and ELA's in there, and all these different organizations. Like, it's completely changed, and it's gotten a lot larger, which is amazing. Like, they see the need, and they're committing to it by putting roots down there. But it's completely shifted, just even in 5 years. So we left from there to go to this tribe. This is a tribal leader. He looks after his tribe. When we first got there, they said, yeah, there's been a lot of killing going on in this tribe. And Steve and I are like, oh, okay. But ELA had gone in, and they've worked with them, and now it has definitely transformed. Like, he's saying, like, okay, the killing has stopped. the community is much more peaceful, and they're sharing their story of things that they've worked through with other communities around them, and how God has worked through them. And it was amazing to see how much his life had changed, but also just the tribe as well. And I think one of the biggest things that hit me was the fact that they grew up in war, and it's all that they knew. They didn't have experience outside of that. Where we have so much access to information, especially growing up in the church. Like, we're taught so many things, but like just the thought of like the Ten Commandments, like something that we are ingrained in as children in the church. They didn't know that. Like, they're so thankful that Ela came in and taught them about stealing, and not stealing from their neighbor. And I was just like, you don't know about stealing, and you're not supposed to do it. Like, that was one of the things that blew me away, is like they only know this little bit, and then how Ela could come in and just completely change their perspective, and show them a way better life than what they've been living, with so much more hope. This is the village, again, at the South Sudan border, that we got to visit, where about 400 people came out, and they all looked at me and said, "Your name is what?" And this is where the Empower training had ended, and it was amazing to see how it just completely transformed them. I think this is one village, but also multiple villages around. Like, people will walk up to 10 kilometers, just to come get the trauma counseling. They'll walk every day for 3 weeks just to hear the good news from these guys. And it was just amazing to see all their smiles, and just how happy they were that the things that they had tearing them down, they've broken free from, and how they've just been transformed as a whole people. This is one story I wanted to share. This guy had gotten up, and they had an opportunity to share some testimonies at the end. And he was just saying how he had accepted Christ, and because of that, his father kicked him out of his house. So he was living on his own. Like, he wasn't with his mother at the time. So he had been kicked out, and he was just sharing about the book of James, and just talking about trials, and going through hard times. And he's just saying, this is my faith, and it has changed me, and I'm sticking with it. He said, I'm not going back. I'm not trying to go back to my father's home. He said, I want him to be saved one day, but this has changed me, and I'm sticking with it. And these trials that I'm going through, they may be difficult, but I'm for Jesus, and I will always be for him. And just his story about that was really impactful to me. And I'm sure there's a lot more stories like his throughout that entire community, because the family system, like, we live in a broken family system in North America. There's just a lot of divorce where we are, but there's no, like, biblically we get a good picture of what marriage should look like. But again, they don't know that, and you have families that men will have 6 or 7 wives, and say one person or a mom will pass away. Well, okay, they might stay with their father, or maybe the father will just pick up and leave, and then all these women and children are left to look after themselves. So the family system is really messed up there, but it's also because of Ela's teaching in the scripture that they're bringing to them. You start to see a husband and wife in just one marriage, and how that's being redeemed. But a lot of kids are affected by that, and he was as well. Just that marriages are so broken there. And again, this is just to kind of give you a picture of how many people came out that day, and we're just hearing about the good news that Ela was sharing with them. Okay, this is while Steve was doing some teaching in Gulu, I was able to walk around with some of the Ela staff, and we were going to meet with different girls that they are supporting. there's a lot of like sex trafficking um, in Gulu, because again, there's no income is hard to get, and they some girls would go into that, and they would try and make money that way, which is very sad. But Ela is working with these girls, and trying to give them and show them value, um, but also building into them so that they can earn a living themselves and they don't have to go back to that life. So I was able to sit down. I would think I got to sit down with 3 or 4 different girls and just hear their stories. So they would, Ela will find these girls and they will help them out financially, to get them started. So they will get them food so they don't have to worry about that. And then they will send them to school so they can learn a simple thing like tailoring. They would learn how to make clothes, and then they would be able to support themselves. And it was cool to see just their stories of how Ela affected them, but also they can share their story beyond that. And that was one of the biggest things that I was encouraged by, is that in all the work that Ela's doing is they're transforming lives, but people can take that and it's tangible and they can share that with people around them. And these girls um, that were so far down were brought up and they were given an opportunity and they met Jesus and they were able to share that with the people around them. And a lot of them come from big families with multiple siblings, and they could share that hope that they had with them and encourage people around them. So this is the market on the right hand side. It's a bit of chaos and smells that I don't want to smell again, but there's a lot going on in there. But I just thought I'd give you an idea what that looks like. This is Christine, sitting here. So another thing that Ela does is resettlement. So like I said at the beginning, the Acholi Quarter, where people are living in extreme poverty, they want to resettle them back home, to the northern part of Uganda near Gulu. And so Christine is this one person that Ela has resettled, and we got to sit down with her at their village and just hear her story. She This is her son beside her, and he came before them. And Steve had asked, like, how long does it take you to prepare and start doing stuff? And it's like him coming, it took him a year just to clear this property, because they don't have the tools or ability to do things like that. So he was there ahead of time, and then Ela met with her in the Holy Quarter. And what they do is they ask, would you like to be resettled? And then if they say yes, then the biggest thing is they have to go back to their home village in Gulu, or that area, and ask them, are you willing to accept this person back? Because of the war and people leaving, and rebels being taken from villages and people returning, it's very complicated. So they have to make sure that they're willing to accept them back, and they'll be welcomed, and they're not going to come back into an environment that there's going to be a lot of turmoil. So we were able to visit with Christine. She had been resettled before we got there, and it was just crazy to see how much joy she has. She lived in the Choli Quarter, and she talked about that, and like her way of making money was, she would go to the quarry and she would carry like 20 kilograms of stone on top of her head out of that deep pit, just so she could carry it out and try and make some money to earn, so she could afford one meal for that day. So she lived in extreme poverty, and then to see her here and so bright and so happy, it shocked me, and I was really thankful to have that experience. And she was just sharing about how much better her life is. Like, when she's in the village, she can farm, and she can sell things, and she can support her family that way too. Like, she has grandkids that she's looking after, and her daughter, and the kids have an opportunity to go to school. I know this is something also that I think Steve kind of got a little bit marked by, was the fact that Ela will pay for 2 of their kids to go to school for 2 years once they've been resettled, just so that if because when they come, they don't have an income, and it takes a while to start farming and doing all those things. So ELA will help them out, so they can hopefully sustain themselves. But just the biggest thing is that only 2 kids get to go to school, and maybe they come with 6 kids, so they got to pick, okay, which ones get to go, and it's only up to 2 years, and hopefully after being there long enough, they can make enough money to be able to send their kids to school. And I think that's just something that we take for granted, is just the opportunity for education here. That you don't have to think about, you don't have to pick, okay, which kid do I get to send to school? And that also the quality of education that we're getting is so good here, and I'm just so thankful for. Um, this is her grandkids, and just opportunity to give them some gifts at the end. That's one thing that Ela does, is just brings them a lot of stuff, just some supplies to help them out. And yeah, Steve got to give this little girl some candy, which was a big thing. He said, if I'm going back, he said, you have to take candy with you, because they absolutely loved it. And it was funny. She's so joyful. And then she walked away, and her brother was like, okay, give one to your brother. And she like gave one. And then he like wanted a second one or something. And she was like, no. It was like, oh, okay. That was a big thing for them. But yeah, no, I just wanted to share about the resettlement, because ELA does, yes, trauma counseling, but they do resettlement as well. And with the girls, the Hope Alive girls, they're not doing just one thing. They're doing so many different things in the community. Here's the next part, the Potter's House. So I think we did a walk. Was it a walk for the Potter's House? I was busy that weekend. I missed it. Whoops. But I got to go visit it and just see kind of the progress that they're at. So Benson's vision for the Potter's House is that people can, from Scripture in Jeremiah, that people can come and have an encounter with the Potter. So that people can come and they can receive healing and counseling, but also encounter God and know Him. So that is his vision for the Potter's House. So they've started construction. But I think one of the things that I didn't recognize until I got there, that the Potter's House is much bigger than just a building. It's multiple buildings. And this is what we saw here. This is a soccer field here. They had to level the ground for that, because soccer is a big thing in Uganda. And playing, they call it play therapy, is a huge part of their counseling as well. That building community and playing with them, and getting outside of your reality and being able to do something that you enjoy opens them up for opportunity to be able to speak into their lives as well. So the Potter's House is, it'll be a spot that they can bring people from the country, take them away and give them perspective outside their own. And I think that's one of the biggest things for me, and I think a lot of people recognize too. When you travel to places like this, you get a different perspective. And some of the things that are maybe so big, or things that you thought were so difficult, seem to become so small when you get a perspective outside your own, and see how people are living in other places. So he wants to bring people from outside, from outside this area, but all over, to be able to come and receive trauma counseling and encounter God. And also people from North America, people from Europe, people from all over, to also come and do trauma counseling. And this is their future vision for ELA, how they can see it sustaining itself by bringing people from out, and offering that counseling so that they can take it. Then it's not just in Uganda; they can take their training to other places and use it. So it's a big endeavor, and it's something that they're working towards. And it was cool just to see the progress, where they're at, and just kind of what the future vision of ELA is. And I think it's one of the just one of the prayer points too for the organization is, what does the future of I Live Again Uganda look like, when we think about the Potter's House and the work that they're doing, as the war in Sudan is going on. They get more refugees, or they're going to have um, a vote for a new president in Uganda. And what is that going to look like? Is there going to be more? Is there going to be war because of that? Like, things are always changing. I think that's one of the things, just to pray for them is safety, but also, what does the future look like, and how is God leading them, and where does He want to take them, to be able to take what they've learned and how they're transforming lives, but take that beyond, out into the world. This is the staff. So we had an opportunity to have a meal with them at the end of our trip, and just get to talk with them and spend time with them. And we wanted to take a picture with them. And I'm just so thankful for our time with each one of them. Something that Steve asked me to share, as there's a lot of information to give you, and I'm sorry for that, but thank you for listening. One of the things he's like, share from your heart, and I'm like, oh, yuck. One of the things that keeps coming to mind is just the woman at the well. Jesus comes to the well. There's this woman there, and he asks her for water, and she's like, well, I'm a Samaritan and you're a Jew. We don't do things together. and he tells her that he can give her living water, and that he can change her life. But she says, is just confused by this. But he tells her everything that she's done, that she doesn't have a husband, and she's had 5 husbands. She's not married to the man she's living with, and just how dirty her life is. And then she tries to change the subject by talking about worship. But then she runs back to the village that she's from, and she tells all the people that, come and see the man that told me everything I've ever done. Come and see this man, that he's the Messiah. He's the one that's come. And I just thinking about, like, people's stories, that these people all have a story of so much pain and anguish and hurt. And that woman at the well, she had so much dirtiness and brokenness and stuff that she was trying to hide, and Jesus exposed that. And he uses that these people's pain that they've suffered through, that he's brought healing there. And he's redeemed them, and that's what he's come to do. He's come to redeem us. And these, just thinking about the woman at the well, that she ran and she told people, I've done all these things, but come see this man. Like, I don't care what I've done, but he's changed me. And you'd think, like, okay, if someone came running, it's like, oh, you are crazy. But, like, something has changed in her. And you can definitely see that in these people that we got to meet with, that they had brokenness, that they were to the point of committing suicide, but they were changed and they were impacted, and they met the potter, and he changed their lives. And I think we all have a story. That's one of the things I noticed, cultural differences, is that they want to be known, and they want people to ask about their stories, and they want questions to be asked, and they want people to know who they are. And I think maybe we come from more of a culture that's afraid of people knowing who we are. Maybe we don't want people to ask questions. Maybe we're afraid that because of something maybe we've done that we don't want people to know, that maybe it'll affect our status. Maybe it'll affect how people view us. But I just think what are stories that we have? What are stories that each one of you have that God has redeemed? And you can use that story to bring encouragement to other people, like people at Ela are doing. They have been redeemed, and they're taking that joy beyond themselves, and they're sharing it with the people in the community and beyond. And I just think, what stories do we have here in this room that you could encourage someone around you with? Or maybe he hasn't redeemed yet, Maybe there's something that you're struggling through and you're walking through, and God hasn't redeemed that yet. Is there someone that you see that has walked through that? Is there someone that you see that could encourage you? Or maybe it's the flip. You see someone walking through something that's so hard, and you can speak into their life, and you can say, "Hey, I walked through this, and I see you're really struggling, but God redeemed me from that, and He has made me new in Him, and I want to see Him do that in you." So it's just my challenge to you guys is to think, what are ways that God has redeemed you, and He can use your story to help the people around you. Because Ela is doing this, and it's amazing to see, and I want us to keep supporting them. What they're doing is so good, and I just want to thank you guys. Thank you for praying for us. Traveling 30 hours. There's a lot that can go on. I think on the way home we almost didn't make one flight. It was really close. It was like off the plane through security, board the next plane and gone. So it was good. I'm glad we made it back. And I just also want to thank everyone that supported financially that Steve and I could take this trip. I think I didn't recognize until I got there how encouraging it is of just our presence being there. Just sitting with the people, like Christine, we went to her village, and Steve and I, we pulled weeds in her garden, and I was like, how is this encouraging? And they're like, she's going to tell everyone about this, and she's going to remember that time that these guys came and they saw her, and they supported her, and they just came and they weeded her garden. And these stories, like, because there are people that have been there before that helped from, I don't know if they were from Canada, but when she did resettle, they went and they planted that garden. And she's just overjoyed, like, remember when they came and they did this? And it's just so encouraging to them that people are showing up and saying, I care about you and I support you. And that was such a big thing for all of them. And I just want to say thank you to you guys for just supporting us in that as well, to be able to go and encourage the people that we got to encourage there.